that regard. But we're going to get through it, and I think Venezuela is going to emerge stronger from it, despite the tragedy that it's confronting right now.
Mr. Secretary, the MOU did not include a specific number of years during which Iran could not develop nuclear weapons. Should a final agreement have a specific number, and is the U.S. pushing for that?
No, why would an MOU would not have that? Because the MOU is not a final agreement. An MOU just creates the construct and the outlines for a negotiation. And there's no doubt that as part of that negotiation, very specific terms like years and limits will be discussed, and that includes the mechanisms by which it's verified and enforced.
But is there a number of years
just heard this morning there is negotiations will take place between GCC and Iran and Iraq regarding Hormuz. Do you support this kind?
What's this now? I'm sorry.
We just heard this morning there is negotiation will take place between GCC and Iran and Iraq regarding Hormuz. Do you support?
I'm not aware of that. I've not seen that report. That wasn't discussed with me today, but I've not seen that report, so I can't comment on it.
Mr.
Secretary, go ahead.
Is the GCC working on some direct agreement with Iran in order to ease tensions?
Well, I can't speak for the communications to any of these countries on a bilateral level. I imagine they've always had communication. And for example, Qatar has been a key mediator in this regard. But as far as our MOU process that we're going to be involved in, what we discussed today is that there will be, I hate using this term mechanism because it's now been used for everything, but there will be a system set up where every step of the way as developments occur in both the technical and political talks surrounding the MOU, they will be included. We're going to make sure they're up to date on everything that's being discussed, on everything that's being considered, and we can get their points of view and their interests aligned with ours in that regard.
So many coming here, your Italian suffered the missile strikes during the recent, yes. But there was no mention for that in the U.S.-Iran memorandum of understanding. What would you comment on that?
Well, look, I think there's a misunderstanding. A memorandum of understanding is not supposed to be like an all-encompassing document. It basically just creates the outlines for a negotiation process. And that's what the MOU did. I mean, it had some specific things about immediately reopening the straits and so forth. But what it ultimately does is create the outlines for a process of negotiation. Within that process, I imagine there'll be many things discussed. And on the specifics about the GCC, one of the things that was mentioned today, which is of great interest to them, is they want some sort of funding for reconstruction. They suffer damages. They want to be compensated for those damages. So I would imagine that as part of the MOU process and as part of their engagement with us in that process, that items such as that are going to come up. Okay.
Your Italian counterpart canceled an engagement prior to your coming here because of the spike in tensions between President Trump and Prime Minister Meloni. Have you addressed that tension? Have you spoken to your counterpart?
I spoke to him last Friday when he made it. Was it Friday or Saturday, whatever day they decided not to come. We have a number of agreements on critical minerals and other things that we are lined up, and those will be signed in due course. And we'll get through it. I talked to him. I have a good relationship with him. He called me, told me he wasn't going to come to Miami. I was headed here anyway, so it worked out fine, I guess. I mean, it was unfortunate that an event like that got interrupted. I thought they should have still come. But that said, we had some agreements ready to sign. We're still going to get them signed soon. We'll just find a place to do it.
Can you let's turn the page and rebuild trust between two allies?
Yeah, look, our relations with Italy continue unimpeded at at every level, military level, other levels. Obviously, the president's very upset. He feels like not just Italy, but other countries in a time in which we were confronting a threat, not just to us, but more particularly to Europe. Many European countries did not step up and do enough. They weren't there, Italy, unfortunately, among that. But, we'll work through that. But his points of view on this have been very clear. It should not be surprising to anybody. He's been repeatedly, he said it again yesterday. He has, and I'm sure those points will come up again during the NATO summit in a couple of weeks.
Last week, Vice President Vance said in the Situation Room that sometimes President Trump is frustration because every time...
Not in the Situation Room. You're
talking
about
the briefing room.
Yeah. What are you doing in the Situation Room? How do you know?
Okay. He said that President Trump was sometimes frustrated because every time a deal between Israel and Lebanon was close, Israel would launch some sort of bomb that would kill a number of civilians in Beirut, and it didn't seem to be productive. A lot of Republicans thought that those comments were inappropriate in Congress. I mean, what do you think of those comments?
So one of the things that was happening, we actually have been able to do this. Last Friday, we restarted this monitoring mechanism that had gone dormant for a while. And what it does is CENTCOM is now sitting not just with the Israeli military command, but the Lebanese command. And anytime an incident happens, we're not taking anybody else's word for it. We can see the incident, and we can quantify what actually happened. So as an example, yesterday, 2 individuals in some sort of vehicle, armed, clearly Lebanese Hezbollah fighters, approached an Israeli checkpoint, and the Israelis actioned that item. A week ago, if that had happened, you would just have a news report that 2 people in Lebanon have been killed by the Israelis. Now we have fidelity that we actually know, not because they told us, but because we saw it. And we saw the footage that these were two armed individuals that were not a part of the Lebanese armed forces who approached the checkpoint and as a result posed a threat. So that's a big difference from what we were getting just a week ago. Beyond that, I would say that today is we're a few hours ahead here, but today will be the third day of 3 days of talks between the Lebanese authorities and the Israeli authorities. I think we had a very good day yesterday. I think we are very close in our hopes of getting a commitment of interest of intent between the two countries that I think begin to outline a promising future. It'll be a process. It'll take some time. It'll take a lot of work. But I can tell you that for the first time in 30 years, the sovereign government of Lebanon is speaking to the government of Israel directly. That's who we're going to be negotiating with. That's who we're going to be working with, not Hezbollah. Hezbollah is not the government of Lebanon. Lebanon has a government. It has democratically elected leaders. They have the sovereign right to speak and defend the interests of the Lebanese people. And what we want for Lebanon is a peaceful future. That's what everyone wants here. And frankly, I think we're going to have a very positive commitment of interest, whether it's of intent, whether it's today or in the days to come. We're working very hard at that. Hopefully today will be a day that can build on some of the things we were able to make progress on yesterday.
But did you agree with the Vice President's sentiment?
No, I already told you the process that we're doing right now, and that is we're going to know what's actually happening, and we're going to be able to make an honest assessment as to what's happening and what isn't happening. Unfortunately, over the last few weeks, there's just been the fog of not knowing exactly who struck what and where and why. I think that's now been confronted and solved, and so I think that's going to give us a lot of fidelity about this process.
Let's just put a fine point on this question. How wide is the divide between you and the Vice President?
On what issue?
On any issue.
This administration, let me tell you something. Everyone here is aligned behind the President of the United States, every single one of us. The President of the United States makes the foreign policy of our country. And our job, we obviously give advice, we give counsel, we give opinions, but when the President of the United States is the one who is elected by the people of our country to conduct our foreign policy, the President makes these decisions, and all of us on his team, every single one of us works in lockstep very closely with one another to execute on the President's foreign policy. Everything we do is because the President's made a decision that it's going to be done. And one of the things I'm very proud of, I can't speak for every element of our government because I'm not involved in other aspects of our government, but one of the things that I'm the proudest of is that when it comes to foreign policy and national security, we have no drama, we have no games. We have a group of people that work very well together and closely to execute on the President's directives, which is why I think we've had good outcomes and good achievements, and we're going to continue to have good outcomes and good achievements. Everyone has an important role to play, and everyone is playing that role and doing it in a collaborative process. And I think that serves the President well, and I think that serves the country well.
Of course, two of them are you.
On the discussion with Iran, sir, as the country's top diplomat, do you not want more of a direct role in these talks, which have been, until now, really led by the Vice President and
well, I think like I think that's just a silly analysis. So the Vice President is the second-ranking person in our government. It just shows you how seriously we take that endeavor. And we have a team of people that do work. I mean, I'm here today because they were overseas last week. We all have a role to play in this regard. So, I mean, I'm here. I've been here for 3 days. This is a key component of that. So, but that, I think that's a really silly question. The Vice President of the United States, other than the President, is the second most powerful person in our government. The fact that he's directly involved in this tells you the importance that our administration has given to this topic. So I think it's a very positive thing that he's involved in it.
Mr. Secretary, you know that all the threats coming from Iran regarding Hormuz, it's affect maritime traffic. How we can end this, even if they didn't close it, but still affect navigation there?
Well, it affects it because they've been blowing up ships and they put mines. That has to be dealt with directly. We want a lot of ships are moving now, but we need to get back to what the straits looked like before this conflict, because it's an international waterway, and that's what it's going to be, one way or the other.
Mr. Secretary, what are your concerns that oil sanctions relief for Iran could lead Tehran to use that funds to rebuild its army, to fund proxy groups, and what leverage does the U.S. have, if any, to stop that?
If Iran uses funds to fund proxies and missiles and all of that, then the deal's not going to work, right? We know that, but let's hope that's not the case. Right now, the only thing they have is a very short-term waiver for 60 days. And to give an opportunity for these negotiations to see where they can lead. I said it, and I'll say it again. If Iran is interested in making a good deal and a real deal, the United States was open to doing it. If they're not, then the President will know that, and he'll have options available to him.
NATO question, please. Yesterday we learned that a NATO chief said in Washington that actually some allies did indeed help the U.S., like Italy and others did open up their bases to American jets. Iran today responded, and they called NATO complicit. They are asking for, they're saying they are accountable for, this U.S.-Iran war. Iran.
Okay.
So do you have any reaction to, first of all, the fact
Look,
that...
we've always made the point that Iran poses an even graver threat to Europe than it does to the United States. Iran already possesses missiles that can reach parts of Europe, which is part of the president's frustration. Everyone likes to go around saying Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, Iran can never have a nuclear weapons capability, but the only one who was willing to do something about it was the president. And when he did something about it, he found allies that gave us a hard time about using our bases. And so, again, if you speak about the NATO alliance, one of the reasons why I've been a strong supporter of our presence in NATO is because it allows us these basing rights that allow us to project power and protect our interests. But if you're not going to be allowed the use of those bases by these countries, then it puts into question the entire alliance. And as far as the president's concerned, he thinks, and he's rightfully thinks, that Iran poses as grave, if not more, a grave threat to parts of Europe than it does to the continental United States. And when he actually stepped forward and actually tried to do something about it, he didn't ask these countries to send their military to join us. We didn't need their help. But he asked if we could use the bases, and some of them said no or gave us a hard time, which I think is not only what he's annoyed about and upset about, but I think, frankly, it creates a real cloud over the NATO alliance that I hope can be fixed. We'll see. All right, I got to run. Let's go.
On Iraq, I'm just curious how concerned you are about Iran being able to consolidate control over a lot of its proxy militias in Iraq. And even as these talks are ongoing, what type of future threat that poses to some of its neighbors?
That's an example of Iranian interference in the sovereign affairs of another country in Iraq. That said, they have a new prime minister. He's forming a government. We have good signals coming from him. He'll be visiting Washington soon to meet with the president. And our hope is that we will continue to stand on behalf of the sovereignty, respect for the sovereignty of the people of Iraq, and not interference from Iran. So that'll be a topic of conversation. We've engaged the new prime minister. He's spoken to the president on the phone already once. We're watching so far, there's been good signals and some good actions that he's taken in the formation of his government. But obviously some challenges remain. But it's something we're going to watch very closely. All right, last one, guys, because we got to get ready to go.
Just on the GCC states wanting compensation for the damage, how would that maybe look like? Could it come from the unfrozen funds?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to speculate right now as to how that'll actually be worked out. I just pointed out to you that is one of the things they raised in our meeting today. It's one of the things they're interested in, and one of the things that I think we're going to have to address at some point. But we haven't really worked through any of the particulars of that yet. Okay?
Something about Russia before you go.
About who?
Russia is accusing the U.S. of failing to deliver on quote-unquote agreements that or understanding that we had in Alaska.
Yeah.
There was
no agreement in Alaska. There was a proposal in Alaska, but there was no agreement in Alaska. If there had been an agreement, we would have had an end of the war. So, as I said, the president is prepared, as the United States remains prepared to play whatever constructive role we can to bring about, an enduring end to this war in Ukraine, and which has been bloody. 20,000 soldiers killed every month, 5,000 a week, most of them Russian. So it's been debilitating for Europe, but especially for Ukraine and for Russia increasingly. So if we are prepared to step forward and play a constructive role, if there's one for us to play, and bringing the parties together and bringing that war to an end. That's what the president's tried to do now for a year and a half. But there was no agreement in Alaska. There was a proposal made in Alaska, but it was never an agreement.
By Russia or by the U.S.?
No, it's the same thing you've seen publicly reported, right? I mean, Russia wants the entirety of Donetsk to be turned over to them, among some other things that they raised.
Marco Rubio, the American Secretary of State, wrapping up his visit in the Gulf. He's speaking with the media in Manama, in Bahrain, where he touched upon a whole host of different issues, where he has said that the United States, according to him, has not agreed for a money transfer to Iran. And the memorandum of understanding, he also pointed out, is not a deal. It is more a framework on basis of which future negotiations, of course, will be held. It'll be interesting to see as to how things unfold from here on. But this is Marco Rubio presenting up as to what he thinks has been discussed and understood in this memorandum of understanding.